you
Very
see?
interesting. So there are a couple of questions, Krish, on trust, and I'm going to try and club them together so that most of our participants or most of our friends get their answer to that. Uh, the basic premise, and Krish, I'll request you to again simplify it as you always do so beautifully. This whole concept of trust, right? Is there a code? Is there a coefficient of trust? How do you build trust? It's a very loose word saying, yeah, please trust me. But in this whole journey of trust, there could be multiple junctures where trust gets depleted, it gets impacted. So if you have to simplify a coefficient of trust for all our members and say, okay, uh, either you start from a space where you trust everyone till trust is broken, or you start from a space where as a person you don't trust anyone, and until people really spend enough time with you to earn the trust. So what's your perspective? Where do you approach this from? And for everyone on this call, we have around 370 people now. If you were to break down this concept of trust into something that's very easy to understand, what would your 2 cents on that be?
Well, that's a big topic, and I can go for half a day on trust. Let's look at how is trust built. Yeah, firstly, I think there are 3 or 4 sources of trust. One is trust is built when you have a kind of a what do you call an expertise authority. Yeah, for example, if there is a doctor or a tax consultant, if they say something, you trust because you know there's a person is coming with certain expertise. Yeah, so that's the first source of trust that is there, because there's somebody who's been a master in their field, and then you will trust them. Yeah, so that is there. Now, therefore, part of your people will have that kind of a trust because they come from that expertise background. The second kind of trust is more, what Stephen Covey said. It's more about this emotional bank account. It's a list of past interactions that you've had. So therefore, I've had lots of interactions with somebody. I know what that person is saying, what is the level of trust. So you already build some kind of a thing. Yeah? That will vary from people to people, but it is more with each person, you build some kind of a trust account, or trust bank account. You would know how much I can believe, how much I can trust. There is some kind of. So those are already existing. Now, when you kind of say, how do I build trust with somebody? I think, well, how does trust come in? I think trust comes in by, firstly, intention. Yeah? If people see a purity of intention in you, then they start trusting you. And I think that intention, initially they may not, but you got to bring it aloud. You got to talk about it. You got to be transparent. You got to talk about your intentions. Maybe even in your, let's take even in a tough decision where let's take a startup that is there, and that startup is getting rid of people. But if they come back and say, listen, this is our intention. We've been this is it. We want to do it. And you give that clarity of intention, then I think that's the first step. Yeah. So purity of intention, or what is it that I want to achieve? I think that is something you got to talk and build that. And if they see that this is what you mean is genuine, then I think they start being trust. Second is they need to, the whole thing is say-do ratio. What do I do what I say? That's another very important for trust. One of my ex-bosses used to have this thing called, what is your say-do ratio? How much do you say and how much do you do? I'll say big things, but I don't do enough, then they won't be trust. They say, yeah, this guy will talk a lot. Yeah, so therefore you got to, as long as your say-do ratio is 1, then I think you start building trust, that they'll know, okay, what he says, what he does. Otherwise, they'll discount it. So I think this is, people have said, walk the talk or whatever it is. So that's very important. So intention. Number 2, you got to kind of, build that credibility. And number 3, you got to keep the intentions of the third person, whoever you're at the forefront. Yeah, that's how you build trust. For example, if I'm interacting and I know, and I say, listen, I understand where you are from. So a little bit of empathy and a little bit of kind of putting their needs ahead builds trust. So firstly, if I have to build trust, I'll have to empathize with you. I'll say, okay, what are your problems? What is it, etc. And try and kind of work on it and put that as a thing. So that's a thing. That's about it. So 3 key things you got to do: clarity and purity of intent. Number 2, say what you do, therefore walk the talk. And number 3, empathize and take that person, whatever their needs are, put that as a thing and say, listen, this is, I understand, this is what it is. So they know at least that you've empathized. and they know that you know what is my problem, and they start kind of accepting it. So that kind of putting yourself in their shoes and putting their problems in front and talking about it is the third way. Yeah. So I think these are the three key things. But always remember, trust comes from all your past interactions. So there is already a trust or an emotional bank account that you built with somebody. But trust also comes from, what kind of credibility you had in your past actions, in your expertise. So those are all there where people keep in their minds when they build trust. So that's in simple way what I think are some of the things you could do to build